Welcome to Cooking by the Books. My name is Stellan Harris. I will be your presenter and demonstrator this evening. Tonight, we're going to be making two different dishes with our equipment here. Our equipment will be a bit different than what you might have in your home, but there will be some explanations for alternatives. Presumably, you will have a normal oven, whereas I am using a toaster oven. It'll get the job done all the same. But let me pull up the slideshow so we can get ourselves started. Share my screen. Well, bam, we love it. So, as I said, welcome to Cooking by the Books. It ain't easy cooking greens, but the secret is it actually kind of is. As long as you know what you're doing and you know what you want to do, cooking greens can be pretty great. As I mentioned, we're going to learn about recipes. This is the same boilerplate text as last time. It's a series about demonstrations and culinary skills for the new and the old. Tonight, as was in the program description, making two things. I'm going to make a kale pesto and then put it in some pasta for a delicious dinner that is highly customizable. We'll get more on that in the future. We're also going to make a batch of homemade lime bars. Lime for a greener twist in honor of St. Patrick's Day. Again, happy St. Patrick's Day. But the real secret of the lime bars is that they work just like lemon bars, but they're a little bit different, a little bit greener, but just as delicious, if not more so. I don't know. I'm torn. I like them both. But I hear you asking, what's that about lime bars? I know lemon bars, but I was told there'd be lime bars here. Well, lime bars are in a category of baking I like to call the bake sale champions. It's the things that don't take a lot of effort, don't take a lot of ingredients, but get you a really good result. Lime bars also are portable. You can eat them. Bar cookies in general are really great for this. Lime bars, especially because you get that nice silky custard on top, that nice curd, while also getting, in this case, a nice shortbread cookie crust. And it's the best of all worlds. In this demonstration, as I mentioned, we're going to cook at a reduced rate. I'm going to give you guys the measurements for like a normal 9 by 13 cents pan. Because we're only using a toaster oven, I only have a 4x4 pan that will fit in there. I checked. And it'll be about half of the amount that you guys might have at home. So I'm going to give you guys the full amounts. But just keep in mind, we'll be cooking with about half of that. So that's what all this good stuff is. But those amounts are for you, it's one cup of unsalted butter, one half cup, oh goodness. That is far away. Amanda's nodding at me, that means it's yes. 1/2 cup granulated sugar, 2 teaspoons vanilla extract, half teaspoon salt, 2 cups and 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. That's for our crust. That's this good stuff right here. And for the filling, we need 2 cups of granulated sugar, 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And that's a weird amount. It'll make sense when we do it. 6 eggs, 1 cup of lime juice. In this case, you could sub for lemon if you've only got lemon, but today we're doing limes. And then, of course, there's the optional decoration of confectioner sugar. It's traditional. It adds a bit more sweetness to a dessert that, in all honesty, isn't super sweet. It's sweet. It's a dessert, but it does have a nice balance of that sort of tart flavor to it. But confectioner sugar also looks very nice. I didn't bring it tonight just because it was an extra thing, but at home, decorate as you want. And speaking of decorations, if you really want to get that St. Patrick's Day green flair, just a drop of green food coloring, just a little bit. The lime curd will be naturally kind of yellow, so it would be very easy to just get a little bit of coloring in there, have nice vibrant green bars. And here's basically what we're going to do. Heat my oven to 325 degrees. You'll want to line your pan with parchment paper, as I've done here. That's mostly because lemon bars don't stick terribly, but if you line your pan with parchment paper, it's much easier to get them out, and you'll get them out in one piece. So as I said, you'll prep the oven, prep the pan. You'll mix the ingredients for the crust in a big bowl. It'll form into kind of like a thick cookie dough. There's no leavener in this, so it's going to bake up into like a shortbread. It'll be very sort of like firm and crumbly, but very delicious. You're going to press that into this pan. You're going to then bake it for about 20 minutes in there. You only want to bake it till it's just kind of light golden brown around the edges, because we're going to bake it again once we have our curd in there. In the meantime, while it's baking, you're going to sift together that sugar and that flour. I know sifting is an odd concept. I recommend sifting. Grab my sieve here. I'm just using this guy. This is what I have in my house. You could probably get away with mixing them and like whisking them very vigorously. You just want to make sure that the flour gets nice and incorporated, because otherwise it might not thicken as much as you'd like. But after you sift those together, you want to mix in the lime, the sugar, the lime juice, the eggs, all that good stuff. And you want to really mix those eggs in, because if you don't, there's a danger that you might get some like white streaks in your curd. It doesn't affect the taste, doesn't affect texture, but it's a bit visually unappealing. So that's something you want to keep an eye out for. And then once your crust pops out, it's a secret tip, something I learned in my practice recipe. You take a fork and you dock the crust, which means you just poke some holes in it, not all the way through, but poke some holes just most of the way through that crust when it's still warm, and then pour that filling in. It gets a bit of the filling into the crust, helps it stick to the crust a bit better, so you don't end up with lime bars that kind of slide off of the crust when they're done. And after you pour in the filling, you're just gonna pop that back in the oven for around 22 to 26 minutes. You just want to bake it until that center is kind of set and doesn't jiggle anymore. Once it's not jiggling anymore, it's done. You can take it out. The real painful part of this recipe is that after you bake it, you need to rest it for about 3 hours, just so that it firms up nice. You want to do two at room temperature, then one in the fridge. But after that, if you can make that Herculean effort of self-control not to eat these delicious lime bars, then you will be rewarded with delicious lime bars. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're back. Yay. So I'm going to start doing all this as I just said. Here I've got my sugar, my butter. I'm just mixing with a normal spoon. I'm going to mix these guys together. Any questions on all that, Amanda?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Oh yeah. If you guys have questions or something's unclear, let us know. We will do our best to help illuminate you a little bit. Adding in my vanilla extract. You guys might know this already, but I'm a bit fast with vanilla. I was more specific last time because Jason from our last program scolded me a little bit, but so we've accurately measured these things out. Flour. This is going to come together, and like I said, a very sticky, kind of greasy almost dough. Don't worry, it won't be greasy when it's done. It's just going to look that way. If you ever made cookies with melted butter before, it'll be familiar. It'll be that kind of thing. It's coming together nice and thick. Add the rest of our flour. A little bit of flour casualty, that's all right. Making mistakes, part of the process. Oh yeah, so now it is nice and thick. I'll show you in just a moment what this should look like. Oh yeah, so after adding all the flour, it's come together, it's sticking to itself. It is a nice greasy ball of cookie dough. You could bake this honestly and have some nice shortbread cookies. That's not what we're here for, but just hot tip. If you're looking to make some shortbread cookies, this is a good recipe to use. Like I said.
We would like to know if you could also email the recipes.
Yes, so you guys should have. So I can email the recipes after this, that's no problem. In the future, I can definitely make sure that the recipes go out too. Say this will be recorded as well, so you'll be on YouTube, but I email the ingredients list, I can email the recipe out to no problem. So I'm just taking that dough and we're going to, in our prepared pan, you spread this out to the best of our ability. You want to, I'm using my hands, that's the kind of guy I am, but a spoon might work better. In fact, I'll use both to prove I'm adaptable. But you just want to make sure that your layer of shortbread is about as even as possible. Make sure you're getting all the way to the edges. Smooth everything out. Doesn't have to be super thick layer, but it should be as even as you can get it. I went a bit hard on one side, so now I have to even it back out. But luckily, this dough is very forgiving. You're not going to get in trouble if you work it a little bit. Use that. This is what it looks like in the camera. Just a cookie dough. I'm going to pop this in the oven. We'll wait for 20 minutes. So don't accidentally start frying with this extra paper. Beautiful. Man, could you do me a favor? So sit along for 20 minutes. Beautiful. All right. So now I'm gonna give this a real quick rinse. I'm gonna make our curd. I'll be right back, folks. And we're back. Just a quick rinse. That's all it needs. Beautiful. So now, while that's cooking, the easiest thing to do, start making your curd. Get it done now, so you don't have to do it later. I have my sifter, this guy right here. And so I'm going to take a spoon out first and take the sugar. What I like to do when sifting is I like to add half the sugar first, just because it's a lot more sugar than is flour. If you have a sifter, just tap it. That's all you got to do. You can also shake it later sometimes, whatever's faster for you. It is not a perfect technique, but it is one that I find helps to get the curd to come together. Beautiful. And then now we add part of the sugar and then all the flour.
Does it still work just fine if you don't have a?
It does. It works. It works just fine. So there's a slight difference. It is not enough that you should rush out and buy a sifter. So if you have one already, if you have a sieve, it's a great use for it, but it is not mandatory in my opinion. Like I said at the start, you could get a similar result by mixing the sugar and flour together and whisking them very vigorously. That's something I've done in the past and haven't noticed a giant difference. But I like to do this just because it does end up with a slightly finer product in the end in terms of the curd. So shaking all this together. And with baking, sometimes it is the small things, but not in this case. In this case, it's just do what works for you. Baking is definitely a bit more science than art, but it should also work to what you can do in your situation. More sugar, more fun. Beautiful. That's all that done. Clean as you, and also the golden rule of cooking, clean as you go. Don't leave a big mess at the end, because then you have to clean up a big mess. If you clean up small messes, you don't have to worry about that.
Don't be like me. Your whole kitchen messy.
Don't be like Amanda, she says. All right, so now I'm going to add in the lime juice. This is lime juice, freshly squeezed. If you want an extra punch of lime flavor, you can also use some of the lime zest. That's a great way to use that. Just mix in this. And we're going to add in our eggs. Beautiful. And as I said before, you want to whisk this pretty vigorously. So you want to get it so that the curd is more homogeneous. You could use a $5 word. You want to get it so that there aren't any big lumps. You don't want any streaks of egg white. You want it to look like one good product. It's actually coming together pretty good. So the main danger I've noticed when you don't sift is that the curd could take a bit longer to come together. But again, it's not fatal. Just whisk it for a bit longer and you'll be golden. Beautiful. All right, yeah. So it should be like this, a little bit thick. If I will come closer and show you. That's right. Changing positions. So it should be like this. It should be kind of thick from the sugar from the flour. You want to get rid of as many of these lumps as you can. But again, it's not perfect. It's not a Great British Bake Off. You're not going to get yelled at by Mary Berry. She would never, I know. But do it as you can. And that's most of our prep for lime bars done. So we're going to move on to the second part of this lesson, which, as some of you may or may have guessed based on the fact that I told you in the program description, is pesto. So, Amanda, have you ever made pesto before?
No, I haven't.
And has never made pesto before. I don't make it often, but I have made it before. And I think pesto is delicious. Pesto has kind of this reputation for being very fancy. It's a very traditional Italian kind of thing. We'll move our faces out of that corner so you can see all the good info. As I was saying, pesto does have a very traditional kind of Italian kind of thing you see on a fancy menu, maybe like Sophia's is pesto pasta with grilled chicken, all that good stuff. But in reality, pesto doesn't have to be super complex or super expensive. Traditionally, pesto is made with olive oil, fresh basil, pine nuts, lemon, Parmesan cheese, and garlic. Amanda, do you buy pine nuts very often?
No, I don't.
I don't either. I don't know that I've ever, I might have bought pine nuts once. It's not something I buy a lot of. But the real secret about pesto is that it's more of a method, and you can make a lot of substitutions in order to get a similar product with different things. Because for one, basil is pretty expensive. And basil is part of that fancy reputation. As I said, you can sub most things. You will need olive oil. You will probably want garlic. If you don't like garlic, you can sub that out. But if you don't like garlic, I don't know how to help you. That's your own road to walk, unfortunately. But you could leave it out. I wouldn't. But most of these things can be substituted for things that are cheaper and more common. For instance, the eponymous basil. And again, all of this, quick disclaimer. If you have any very staunch traditional Italian relatives, what I'm going to tell you is heresy. I can't go to Italy anymore. I'll be killed. But here, just keep this. This is our secret, okay? All right, good. So the basil can be subbed for any kind of like really nice, tasty green. We're using kale today. Kale does have a lot of flavor. It can be overshadowed by its bitterness. Kale's got kind of an infamous reputation for being a very bitter kind of salad green, but it's great in chips, and it'll be great in this because the bitterness will be counteracted by all the fat we have in the recipe, the acid, the salts, the garlic, all that stuff will seek to sort of like tame that bitterness in kale. But if you don't like kale at all, and you don't want to deal with kale at all, there are a lot of other things you can use. Spinach, cilantro. I've seen arugula used. There are a lot of different greens that you can use. I've seen parsley on occasion. If you want more of like something closer to like a Middle Eastern kind of condiment, like you could go with parsley. But in reality, you want a flavorful herb that will stand up well to blending. But maybe the basil isn't your problem. Maybe you're like, well, pine nuts, as we discussed, I've never bought pine nuts. I wouldn't know where to look for pine nuts. Well, the good thing is that it doesn't have to be pine nuts. If you have a specific kind of nut that you like you could do almonds, you can do pistachios. They're also green, bonus green points for the pesto. Pistachios are great in this. If you have maybe a nut allergy, you can use sunflower seeds as a nice substitute. You could probably get rid of cashews. Cashews would add a nice unctuousness to the pesto. Cashews are very fatty and delicious. But like I said, it doesn't have to be pine nuts. It can be a whole sundry list of other nuts and or seeds. But I hear you, Stellan. I am lactose intolerant. The cheese is off limits to me. I can't do cheese. Well, don't worry, my lactose intolerant friends. The cheese is also optional. Maybe not optional. You want something cheesy in there. It doesn't have to be cheese. One substitution I found a lot of praise for is nutritional yeast. If you're unfamiliar, nutritional yeast is a powdery substance that is yeast that's been dried and sort of ground up, and it tastes like cheese. It's used in a lot of vegan cheese products, and I highly recommend subbing that in if you do have a dairy allergy. However, if you don't and you still want to buy Parmesan cheese for whatever reason, you can use any kind of hard, salty cheese. Anything like pecorino, Asiago, aged manchego if you're feeling spicy, not literally spicy, but you know. But all that stuff can be subbed out to maybe what you have or what's cheaper. And that is the beauty of looking at pesto as more of a method than like a strict recipe, is that you can make substitutions for your pesto. And your pesto might not look like my pesto or look like Amanda's pesto, but the pesto will still be good. And that is the secret. Now you're in the know. This is the part where there might be some roadblocks. However, don't worry, I'll get you through it. You might have seen this. Start to panic. Calm down. We'll get through this together. It'll be fine. So, you don't inherently need any special equipment to make a pesto. Traditionally, pesto is made with a knife. I actually have made pesto with a knife before I got my food processor, and it's very possible. It'll involve a lot of chopping. You'll want to grind with the backside of your knife. When you want to get things as small as possible, you can use the flat of your knife. My knife's over there, so I don't want to demonstrate it, but you'll take the knife, you'll put it flat, and you'll just kind of grind it to get those nuts a bit more pulverized, to get those herbs to release all their oils, all that good stuff. You could make pesto with just a cutting board and a knife. It'll take more time, it'll be a bit more involved, but it's extremely possible. Now, If you don't have if for some reason you don't want to use a knife, but you do have a mortar and pestle, which is apparently coming back. Did you know this, Amanda? More people are buying mortar and pestle for like guacamole and stuff. I feel like
I've noticed it.
Yeah, the mortar and pestles are coming back, folks. The next hot trend. But if you happen to have one, maybe you inherited one from a relative, maybe your grandmother, maybe you grind spices or something like that in a mortar and pestle. Mortar and pestle is arguably another traditional way to make pesto. The upside of using a mortar and pestle is that you can grind the nuts a bit finer, and you end up with more of a nut butter consistency rather than just like chopped nuts. You get a bit of that too with the traditional like knife grinding method, but if you want a very creamy pesto and you want the nut butter to kind of add to that, mortar and pestle is a great way to do that. Now, the easy method we're using is of course the food processor. The food processor makes this very hands-off, very quick, and very easy. Now, I understand, Stellan, I don't want to buy a food processor. They're expensive. I don't use them too often. Sure. I hear you. I am not going to stand up here and say, everyone, a food processor in every house, for everyone, they can all use it. No. Use a method that fits your lifestyle. And that is the beauty of the series, is that I'm trying to bring to you recipes that can be adapted to what you want to do and what you can do. So don't feel that you need a food processor. It'll be a bit more involved, but it's definitely possible. Now, how do we make it? What do you need? So, again, this is my recipe. It can be adapted. In fact, you should. Please adapt my recipe. Use what works for you. But these are good. This is a good guiding point for amounts. So I have 4 cups of chopped kale. It's de-stemmed, de-ribbed. I've heard both. I don't know which is correct, but either one works. One thing you could do, and I've seen this in a couple places, if you parboil the kale stems, you can also use those. But you don't want to use the kale stems on their own because they are very firm and kind of woody. So you really want to, and in fact, if you want to use the kale stems in something else, you could chop them up, put them in a stew. Any kind of like that slow wet cooking will kind of soften and tenderize those kale stems. What sort of did you can marinate them overnight in olive oil, and that kind of denatures them a little bit, makes them a bit more tender, and then cook with them that way. I don't know what that does to the olive oil. I imagine you get some of that kaleness. I don't know if you would leach any of that bitterness of the oil, but something to consider. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. You need some sort of green. I'm using kale. You need a 1/3 cup of olive oil and more as needed. Again, pesto is really up to what you want to do. If you want your pesto a bit more loose, a bit more saucy perhaps, then you can add more olive oil as necessary. I would caution against it in this recipe because we do have another secret substance to help with that. But in fact, I'll tell you what it is. It is pasta water. We're going to boil our pasta. We're going to get some nice, beautiful pasta water, some a good starchy pasta water that is really the secret to a lot of good pasta sauces. But so olive oil as needed. Don't go crazy quite yet. You need some nuts. I'm using a 1/4 cup of chopped walnuts. You need some kind of cheese. I'm using a 1/3 cup Parmesan grated. That's this guy here. You need 1 large lemon, both zest and juice. Lemon zest is not really a secret anymore. Lemon zest is a great way to add lemon flavor. And you've already bought the lemon. Use the whole thing. You use every part of the lemon, like every part of the buffalo. It's great. I'm a big fan of lemon zest. And the question you might ask, Stella, can I use lime juice? Of course. If you want more green in this pesto, use lime juice. You'll need more limes because limes give less juice per lime than lemons do, just because of size. But you could totally use lime juice if you want to keep this a very lime-centric meal. And of course, salt and pepper to taste, and 1 pound pasta of your choice. I'm going to use fettuccine. I'm going to say it fancy like that because that's what we're doing here tonight. But that's most of what you need. And the method is, as I said, pretty simple. Everything is going in that food processor in this case. If you're doing it with a knife, you would start with the hard things, your nuts, your garlic, your cheese, get all that nice and fine, and then incorporate your kale, then start grinding. We're going to do the same thing, same order of operations here. I'm going to start with the nuts and the cheese. They're just going directly in here. That was my walnuts and my garlic. In goes the cheese. Beautiful. Remember, keep an eye on the mess that you make. It's gonna make cleaning up a lot easier. Amanda, how are we doing on our timer?
About 5 minutes left.
Beautiful. All right, now our pasta water is starting to get up to temp. We love to see this. Oh yeah, I'm gonna give that some time without a lid. But it's boiling. In fact, that's gonna be pretty soon. Oh, I almost forgot. I forgot an important step. We need to salt our pasta water. Because we are going to be adding this stuff to our pesto, it helps if it's a little salty. I've heard the common phrase, I don't know the Italian, but it's one to water, as salty as the sea. This is apparently a misnomer. Apparently, I've done a bit of research. Because this is the kind of thing I look up because I do cooking just at the library. But apparently the amount of salt that you would get in the sea is way too salty for cooking pasta. So it seems as though it's more of a metaphor. You want it salty like the sea, not as salty as the sea. Maybe a translation issue. I couldn't tell you. But
One question.
yes.
Candace would like to know how much garlic.
So garlic is a hot button issue.
Yes.
I called for one clove in the recipe. I did put in 2 because I know pesto is what, Amanda? A method. That's right.
Yes.
Pesto's a method. I ambushed Amanda with that question. Pesto is a method, and I did a test batch yesterday. In fact, it's sitting over there. But I found that I wanted more garlic because there is a tendency for the garlic to get it lost. You have a lot of strong flavors in this pesto. You've got the kale, the olive oil, the lemon. It could be easy for garlic to get lost in that, especially once we dilute it with some pasta water for our sauce. So I added a bit more garlic. I would say you could do probably 3 cloves safely if you want a bit more garlic flavor, but ideally just taste it. After we blend everything together, taste it. If you want more of something, add it. One thing I like to do at home, I didn't do it here because I like to be mindful of spice. Add some red chili flake. You get a little like understated heat in the pesto. Really comes through well in the pasta too. But thank you for the question and exposing my garlic crimes. All right, so I'm gonna mute us for a second so that I can blend this and not deafen all you fine folks. Be right back. Hello again, fine folks, we're back. I have reduced the nuts and the garlic and the cheese to a fine powder, not fine powder, more of like a coarse grind, some sand perhaps. And notice our water is boiling for our pasta. Amanda, I need some guidance here.
Yes.
I'm already committing Italian crimes. Can I break the pasta too?
I have. So
Okay.
I want to be a criminal with me.
All right. Well, we'll all be criminals together. I'm gonna snap this pasta. And like I said, this is just bog standard fettuccine. I bought it at Gerb's down the road. And then that goes. I'm going to use the whole box. If you're cooking for less, you don't have to use the whole box, but I'm going to. I like to do it in a couple different stages. Oh. Take out all my hint of aggression on this pasta. Some of them even come pre-broken. That seems unfair. I don't know. Why am I judged? The pasta wants to break. I have my fork here, make sure everything is nice and submerged. I'm going to start a timer for the pasta. The pasta will go for about, the box says 12. I like to pull it, I check it around 10. How do you check the pasta? You get a piece of pasta. It's very simple. We're not going to cook the pasta anymore. Not really. It'll stay hot in the pot after we drain it, but we're not going to cook it much more afterwards, like you would in some sauces. So you want to make sure that it's done to your liking. If you like your pasta a little more cooked, do that. If you like it more al dente, cook it a little less. Again, you are the master of your pesto. You have the pesto power. It's all in your control. I have that set. Now I'm going to add in the kale. This will seem like a lot of greens because it kind of is, but don't worry, it will all reduce down relatively easily. I'm gonna add all the pesto at once. You could do it in batches if you like. I don't care to. It has not affected the products to my noticing. Oh, I'm starting to smell the crust now. It smells very good, folks. I wish I could bring you these smells. Oh, beautiful. All right. So, as I mentioned, we're going to act fast. Beautiful. There's our crust. It's just golden brown around the edges. Now, as previously mentioned, I'm going to take my fork, and I'm going to dock it. So let's move it over here. That's center. So I don't have to keep bending around with all these hot appliances. Safety first, folks. If you're at home, you can use an oven mitt. I forgot to bring mine. So we're making do with what we have. But I'm just going to take my fork, just poke some holes in here, not all the way through. We do want it to hold, but just up and down. I'm doing like maybe 4 rows. Use as many as you feel. Like I said, that 20 minutes is of course a guideline. If your oven is a bit hotter, you want to check it early. The real guiding point is golden brown around the edges. And now we've got a nice custard. Mix it up in case anything fell to the bottom. It's thickened a bit more, which is something that will happen as it sits, and all that flour does its job. And then we just pour it over. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. As much as you dare. All right. And then this guy's going back in the oven. Oh, still, you said you're touching this pan with your bare hands. How can you do this? Because I have burned myself too often for it to matter. And also, this pan doesn't get too hot. It's simply aluminum. It will not hold the heat too long. Well, just fits. All right, Amanda, you set another 20 minutes for us. Beautiful. All right, as I was saying, it's the benefit of doing this all at once. You get to see things will pop at the same time, you don't have to stop. But thankfully, all of this isn't time sensitive. The baking is the most time sensitive part. So back to pesto. I've put in all of our kale. I'm going to pop this guy back on. I have not added the oil yet. I am going to add the lemon. I've decided I was waffling on it, but I'm going to add our lemon and our lemon zest. I want a little bit of liquid in there, so it's not entirely dry. Because then we just get something a bit odd. You get a bit of moisture from the kale, but grease the wheels a little bit more. So, lid back on. Beautiful. All right. So I'm going to mute again, folks, just so that you don't have to hear all these food processor noises. And we're back. Thank you for your patience. So at this stage, your pesto will not look too terribly like a pesto yet. In this case, it is chopped over everything, but it is not saucy. It is still very dry, even with the lemon juice that I added. It is a bit moist. You get a bit of moisture from the kale, but it is definitely not the unctuous condiments that Italian grandmothers have made for ages. So we're going to add our secret ingredient for that. Not so secret ingredient. It's the olive oil. The olive oil is going to give us more of that consistency that we're after. And there are a number of schools of thoughts on this. Some call to add it as it's going. I just added it all at once. There is an argument to make for slowly drizzling it in to get more of an emulsification with the lemon juice and the kale juices. I have not done enough pesto to say, but I did this method last night and it worked just fine. So isn't that what matters?
Does it matter what kind of olive oil you use?
The better olive oil, the better, but inherently no. Say I'm using extra virgin olive oil. Also, I gotta stir our pasta. Pasta's sticking together. What am I doing? Don't forget to stir your pasta, folks. Don't make my mistakes. Learn from my example. Do as they say, not as I do. All that good stuff. So, I use extra virgin olive oil. Any kind of good olive oil that you have, if you're feeling real fancy and you want to use some infused olive oils or something, that works too. But I'm using bog standard extra virgin olive oil. The pasta fork is getting sticky with the starches. This is ideal. This pasta is not done yet. And also, a subtle thing that I've done that you might not have picked up on is I'm boiling that pasta in a rather small pot. That is not a mistake. That is intentional. Because the smaller the pot, the less water. And the less water, the more potent your pasta water will be. And of course, you don't have to do this. This is not necessary. But this is both the pot that I had. And I did notice the difference in the pasta water. But again, not necessary. Just a fun thing I did. But yes, I'm going to start blending our pesto, getting it to a more saucy consistency, and I'll be right back. And we're back, folks. Thank you for waiting. So, time to check. This pesto, it has definitely started to become more sticky. Well, not sticky, more. It's making to stick to itself more, I'll say. It's not a sticky condiment, but that's because that olive oil is starting to emulsify things. And this is at this point is pretty good. You could add this to your pasta, it would be fine. You could use it on a sandwich spread. It's about the consistency of like a sandwich spread. A bit more chunky because it's not smooth like a mayonnaise, but that's about the consistency it's in right now. It's sticking to my spatula, as you can see. But in this case, I'm going to add a bit more olive oil. And this is why I said as needed, because every bunch of kale will be different. Every batch of pesto might be a little different. And so you want to be able to make sure that you can react appropriately. Add a couple tablespoons more. Check on what's our time. Beautiful. Bit of a spill. That's all right. All right. We have a minute left on our pasta. So things are going to start moving fast. Don't worry. We're almost there. Give that another mix. Beautiful. All right. So I can scrape off this, give this pesto one more blitz, and then we'll be good to go. Amanda, have you eaten much pesto pasta?
Not a ton, no. I have it like restaurants before, but yeah, not really homemade.
I like to do this at the home, gives me a bit more control. But again, it's all about what works for folks. All right, I'm going to pause briefly and then we'll start moving fast. The pasta will be done. We're back, and our pasta seems to be done. There's my alarm. Let's taste. Seems to be done, feeling done. Best way to check. Each one of our noodles. Looks pretty done. Oops. Excuse me. Disaster. One of the things kind of plugged. There we go. I said it was a bit awkward there, folks. Yep, that's done. All right, Amanda, could you please drain our pasta for us?
I can.
What part?
I want to make sure that everything's on.
Yes. First, I'm going to steal some of that water from you.
Yes.
We're going to make about half a cup of this pasta water. And just, if your pan's like mine's got some nice spouts, that's a great way to do. That's a great way to do this. Do it as you like. Yeah. Yes. Safety first,
Yes.
folks. Mm-hmm. A slight spill, folks. Don't worry. Amanda will be back. You're stuck with me for a little bit, only a little bit. There's over exuberance in my pouring looks like. Got a bit of that water from the pasta. Yeah. But worry not. All right. This will go right here. Beautiful. So our pesto is done. It's had a nice consistency. It's got a bit creamy and a bit more oil. Good to go. Thank you. We can turn that heat off. So we'll take our pasta, freshly drained. We'll take our pesto off this guy. Take out the blade too. Don't need him right now. We'll feed that good pesto we can. Beautiful. Beautiful. We'll go there. All right. So we've made our pesto. It is a vibrant green. The best way to keep it green, because as you may or may not know, this will become a bit more brown over time because of oxidization. So a good way to prevent this is, of course, to freeze it. Pesto freezes beautifully and reconstitutes just as easily. Or you can do, in fact, I have a good example. What I did with last night's batch, which is this guy here. You can cover it in olive oil. Just enough to cover everything. The olive oil will get a bit green, but now it's nice pesto olive oil. So it's a nice byproduct. But for our current thing, I'm going to add 3/4 of our pesto. Start to mix. Scrape off a little bit. Beautiful. And add just a dash of that starchy pasta water. And we're just going to toss everything together. As you toss the pasta, it'll start to become a vibrant green. A lot of the heat from the pasta will start to release some of those pesto smells. I'm getting a lot of that right now, and it is turning a lovely shade of green. I'm going to add a bit more of our pesto because I want the pasta to be nice and flavorful, because this is the only flavoring I'm going to add to this. You don't have to just add that. You could, but it's up to you. You are the pastor of your pesto, as it were. Shout out to Chef John from Food Wishes. He is an inspiration, both in the puns and the cooking, I guess. But.
Not familiar. I'll have to check.
Yeah, Food Wishes is a great resource. Cooks all sorts of things. Not what this recipe is from, but I follow his content quite a lot. He's been doing it for years. I'll stop nerding out about Chef John, because our pesto pasta is done. Now, this, of course, as I mentioned, is more of a template. You don't have to just do pesto and pasta. There is the classic chicken pesto pasta. One thing I've seen that it sounds really good is you can get some fresh mozzarella and cube that up very small and add that in. Get a bit more of a cheesy pasta. You can add whatever protein you like. You can add some red pepper flake, anything that works. And of course, taste. I need to taste this for seasoning, because we didn't add much salt and pepper to this. We salted the water, but okay. Add some salt, add some pepper. Let's say about half a teaspoon to start, and then much pepper as I feel like. It's not even what I feel like; it's what my forearms will take. I had a chef friend who, in a restaurant, he would make, I think it was gumbo, and he asked his superior how much pepper, And he said, start grinding. And eventually he ground until he couldn't grind anymore. I said, that's enough. You don't need that much pepper. But I always like that funny anecdote. Chefs are interesting people. Takes all kinds, folks. All right, how are we doing in the chat, Amanda?
Just got another question.
Look at that.
How long do we bake the lime filling on the crust?
I'm doing another 20 minutes, but again, a nice visual is that you want to bake it until there's no more jiggling.
We have about 7 minutes left.
Beautiful. So, and the beauty of doing this way, folks, is that I already have some lime bars. I already baked them. Off camera. It's like Rachel Ray. I'll pull something out of the oven already cooked. I baked these last night. They are beautiful. I did not decorate them, but one could. I'll bring them a bit closer so folks can see what the end product will look like. In fact, I also played up some of the pasta. See the whole thing. I think this sauce, let me taste it again.
It seems like Lindsay is doing this along with you.
Of course.
Also making the lime.
Yeah, so it should be another 20 minutes. Beautiful. Salt really highlights everything. Not too salty, but very flavorful. All right. Beautiful. Nice green speckled pasta for this St. Patrick's Day program. I'm going to, this is not planned, folks. Amanda, would you come in?
Yes.
Would you please try our pasta for us?
Sure.
Don't hold back. I won't cry too much.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know if I like pesto, so here's the moment of truth.
Here's the moment of truth, folks.
Oh, I really like it.
Yeah? Okay, good.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And the beauty of this is this pesto will keep in the fridge for a couple months frozen. If you need to use it in a couple days, I would say cover it in olive oil so you maintain that color. One other trick you can do to maintain that color a bit longer is you can blanch your kale beforehand. You can get a pot of boiling water like we did, and then put the kale in for 60 seconds, take it out, and maybe put it in some cold water. That will lock in that chlorophyll and keep it nice and green for a bit longer. I didn't do that in this pesto. You don't have to, but if you're concerned about it becoming a bit brown, that's something that you could do.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to take that, please. Oh. Keep it with.
Well, you don't have to tell me twice.
All right. So how's our timer looking on these lime bars, Amanda?
4 minutes.
Beautiful. I'm going to start checking these. I don't trust it, but let me show you what these lime bars will look like after we're done. Approaching the camera. Beautiful lime bars. These are a bit speckled on top because I didn't mix as well as I could have, but they're still beautiful. They're delicious. Probably Amanda eat one here in a little bit, but in the meantime, check our current batch. Got some drippage looking. Get some drippage. That's all right. So we're still a bit jiggly. That's all right. That pan's done us a good job. And yeah, so this pesto pasta is done. Our lime bars will be done shortly, but I've shown you what the final. Oh, let me show you the pesto pasta. What am I doing? I gave it to Amanda and forgot about it. They walked off camera for a second to grab another bowl. I'll also show you our pesto in its unpasted form. Give you an idea of what yours might look like. Beautiful. So we will share with the class. So this is our pesto pasta, nice and green and speckled and delicious. And this here is our pesto, 2 containers. Not sure why I did that. Who knows? But that nice, beautiful green condiment. put it on sandwiches. And it sounds good, Amanda. Pesto grilled cheese.
That sounds really good.
You could use the mozzarella. You wouldn't have to. Maybe sprinkle a bit of Parmesan on there. Delicious. Or even just a nice American craft single. I'm not going to judge.
That is how I tend to make it.
There are arguments that that's the way they're supposed to be made. I've heard the arguments. I won't come down on either side. But all right. Well. Beautiful. All right. I just realized we had that. We had that screen up all the time. I was sharing my screen that whole time. Well, that's all right. I'll show you on the big screen now. We're all learning here, folks, but there's that pesto pasta. Here's our lime bars. Beautiful. And finally, our pesto. Beautiful. All right. What's our timer like, Amanda?
Just about a minute.
All right. Well, I'm going to begin wrapping up, folks. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We have made kale pesto pasta, and I hope you have made kale pesto pasta. If not tonight, then maybe later on. I hope I've unlocked the door to pestos of future for you. Pestos of future, present, and past, but mostly future, I hope. We've made lime bars, which are tangy and delicious. Amanda, would you like a lime bar?
I love a lime bar.
Please have a lime bar.
Thank you.
Of course. It's got a nice shortbread crust. You can see it. You can see how I hired Amanda, bribing Amanda with pastries and pasta.
That's why I decided to do strawberry.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really blame you. Let's check our sugar bars again. Again, we're looking for no jiggle, and we have achieved no jiggle, folks. The lime bars are done. Beautiful. All right. So these, like I said, are sort of like off yellow. I'm gonna get another piece of towel so I can show you the benefit of the video medium. So this is, oh no, the white balance of these is terrible. Yeah. Of course. Thank you, Kathy. These are done. These will cool overnight, cover them with powdered sugar and all that good stuff. But that is going to be the end of our program. Excuse us for a bit of our technical difficulties, but we hope that this has been informative for you folks and that in the end, you are able to try these, make these for your own, have a happy St. Patrick's Day, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.